beautiful color red. I have to tell you quickly that come heck or high water, I was going to be here. My flight was canceled not once, not twice, but 3 times. But I made sure I got here because I knew that I couldn't miss this beautiful event because of all of you. We talk about duty, honor, integrity, commitment, country. But what about sacrifice? Sacrifice that our military give up every single day, including the ultimate sacrifice, giving their life for our freedom, for us to be here today. Well, today I want to talk about our sacrifice and what Wounded Warrior Project did for Shane and I. But first I want to tell you a quick story. This is very important. I was on a flight the other day, and we had a connecting, so we're waiting, and I heard the flight attendant come on, and she said, I have a wounded veteran at the back of the plane. Do we have a nurse or doctor on board? So being the nurse that I am, I was way at the front of the plane. I stood up, and I made my way to the back of the plane, not knowing what I was going to find, but it didn't matter. I called them all my sons and daughters. Somebody needed me. Made my way to the back of the plane. There was this strong, muscular, handsome young man, red in the face. His fists were clenched tight. His head was bowed down. So I knelt down and I asked him, what can I do for you, sir? He said, get me off this plane now. And I said, I can do that. Take my hand, look at me, don't look at anybody else. We got him off the plane. The 2 security guards were waiting for him as we exited. You see, he asked the person next to him to leave the seat empty because he was feeling overwhelmed. He was having an anxiety attack. That person didn't believe him. She said, you're not a wounded veteran. You have both legs, both arms. You have no visible scars. You're not a wounded veteran. And that ignited the anxiety attack. She didn't believe him because he had the invisible wounds of war. And that's why I'm here today to tell you, because that is the primarily the major concern is post-traumatic stress disorder and the invisible wounds of war, PTSD, traumatic brain injury. My dark storm started 6.5 years ago when I got a phone call after I was working a 12-hour shift as an ER nurse in a community hospital. And when I picked the phone up, it was a stranger telling me my son was critically wounded in Iraq. He was serving in the Army. He's my only son. His father died of brain cancer when he was 6 months old. So when I picked that phone, I see many moms out there. You can imagine the devastation. I thought it was a dream. 3 phone calls later, I found out he lost 1 leg. I dropped to my knees on that 3rd phone call. They said they had to amputate his other leg to save his life. I knew as a nurse this was bad. What I didn't know was he had multiple cardiac arrests on site at the Black Hawk helicopter, which meant that his heart stopped multiple times. The bottom line, he has severe anoxic traumatic brain injury, visible wounds of war, you can't see it, his head looks fine, and then of course the above knee bilateral amputation, and post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety disorder. So you can understand as a mom how difficult that was. But what happened to us and what happened to my son, we made a choice. And with that choice, it was Wounded Warrior Project that came into our lives, and they walked in through the doors of Walter Reed Army Medical Center and handed us a backpack and told my son that we're here for you and we're here for your mom. And anything you need, let us know. This backpack, we had no idea the significance, what that meant. You see, my son didn't even know who I was, but yet they approached him because he was a brother, and they wanted to make sure that he was recognized and he wasn't forgotten. Because the greatest casualty of war is being forgotten. And as I look out at the audience, I see many veterans. Raise your hand. Let's give them a round of applause. VA in Minneapolis for traumatic brain injury rehab for 1 year. Then we went to Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas, where he remained for 3.5 years to continue that fight. physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, emotional therapy, and cognitive and psychological therapy. Those days went from weeks to months to years, all the while at his side. And it had been almost 2.5 years I received a phone call from the Wounded Warrior Project. All the while, they were a presence. They would take him on fishing trips and boating trips and anything to get our warriors out, whether they're wounded or not. Some of them have bandages still, and they were participating in our sports, in our events. But they gave me a call, and they said, Cindy, we want you to come to Washington, D.C. and make history, make change for mothers like you and caregivers. Will you do it? Absolutely. So the first time I left my son, after almost 3 years, it was 2.5 some years, I never left his side. I said, absolutely, if I can help another mom like me, I'll do it. Well, you see, there's lots of gaps in the system. I left my nursing career, I gave up my home, my job, my health insurance, and I'm no spring chicken. I was worried. So we did. We went to D.C., I met other moms, other caregivers, we fought, we cried, we collaborated, we started knocking on congressmen's doors, telling them our story, state representative, anybody that would hear it. And I'm proud to stand here today because of the Wounded Warrior Project. We now have the Caregiver and Veterans Omnibus Health Service Act of 2010, and we now made history. We get health care, we get monthly stipends. With a vision to foster the most successful, well-adjusted wounded warriors in the history of any war. We have 18 programs and services, and I am telling you today, my son is a different person because of it. He has been to Alaska fishing, where he came back and told me that was the best time of his life, because he met other warriors like him. And they collaborate, they bonded, they peer mentored, they talked about those invisible wounds of war. Because he tells me, Mom, you don't understand, you're a civilian. Only my brothers know what I've been through. Am I right, veterans out there? Only my brothers know what I've been through. So, Alaska caught king salmon and halibut. He saw whales, dolphins. He saw whales. But most importantly, the look on that young man's face when he came back said it all. We've been skydiving. Can you believe he talked me into skydiving? I thought I was going to die. But he said, Mom, you can do this. I know you can. I said, well, if you've done it before, I can do it. So I can mark that off my bucket list. Hunting. He shot a 4-point buck with a bow from his wheelchair. Where else can you do that in America without the help of the Wounded Warrior Project? He downhill skis, he fishes, he hunts. He was on a hockey team for 3 years where he sits in a sled. But more importantly, a new program called the Independence Program has literally changed Shane's life. Because when he moved back home, we lived in a small rural town. He was very bored. He started to get depressed, and I was very worried. The suicide rate. Last year, the Pentagon said that the Army statistics show there were more suicides than there were killed in Afghanistan. That's a problem. We need to fix that. So you can see I had to watch my son. I didn't know what he would do to himself. When the Warrior Project came back and said, we want Shane to be in this program called the Independence Program. And it was a pilot program to begin with. They hired a job coach. We collaborated. Shane, what do you want to do in your community? What do you want to work as? I want to be a junior high football coach because football was my thing in school. He wrestled and played football. And I'm proud to say they hired a job coach from Tiffin University who also played football in Wilmington, who's a track coach. He worked with my son every single day where you see he can't read or write because of the brain injury. He cannot read or write. That brain injury, parts of the brain died. So he's lost that ability. He was 21 when that happened. So the job coach worked with Shane, because in the state of Ohio, you have to complete a modular. What do you do with that computer module? You got to read, right? You got to take a test. It overwhelmed Shane. This young man, CJ, never gave up on Shane. They worked hard every single day for 4 to 5 hours. Shane passed the modular. He passed the CPR certification, and last year he was St. Willin Junior High defensive coach. They won 4 games and lost 3. I can't tell you the difference that it made in my son. The self-esteem returned. Overcoming those barriers, because you got to understand, he's still in a wheelchair. Yes, he had prosthetics, but the higher the amputation, it's very difficult for him to walk in crowds, up hills, and grassy areas, so he's in a wheelchair. So he had to overcome those barriers, getting on that field and moving around quickly with those young men and women. Yes, we have a girl on our team, by the way. He overcome the barriers. But most importantly, he taught those young men and women on that team that you can accept a veteran. And the stigma of the veterans being, going crazy, that's not true. The veterans need to be honored and respected, and that's what it was tenfold, because it not only helped Shane, it helped those young men and women understand today's society and our warriors and what their needs are. I can't tell you how literally that changed my son, and quite frankly, I don't know where I'd be today if Wounded Warrior Project didn't call me to become a part of Wounded Warrior Project Warrior Speak, to tell you our story, because this is my therapy. I don't want to take a bunch of pills. I don't want to sit there across from somebody and talk for an hour. That doesn't help me. This is what helps me, telling our story over and over, and enlisting the public's aid, because the greatest casualty is being forgotten. And Robert Davies had said this perfectly, and I quote, "This land shall remain the home of the free, so long as it is the home of the brave." How important is that? Because it was a volunteer war, and 9/11 changed my son and I's life, among everybody else. When we watched on TV, he told me, "I am joining the Army. I'm not going to let them come on our land and kill innocent people." And I have to tell you a quick story. When the Boston bombings attack occurred, it reactivated Shane's PTSD when he saw the blasts and the devastation, and his night terrors have returned because he kept the children. The children are very difficult, and that's where Wounded Warrior Project comes back in. Last week we were in New York for the Wounded Warrior Project Courage Award, and they asked Shane and I to speak in front of 1,000 people. And when he looked out in that audience and saw his brothers, he broke down and cried. And he doesn't cry, but he realized that he made it, and that he is now, on the t-shirt, he is now the guy on the bottom carrying his friends on top. Because every word that comes up to him, and they say, "Shane, you're an inspiration," he goes, "No, do what I do. It makes a difference. Don't give up, because you can make a difference in your community." And I'm so proud of my son. I can't tell you how proud. Today, each and every one of you are a part of our lives by what you're doing for this walk. I think it's amazing what you've done in the past. Al has told me, and Vish has told me, this is not the first time you've done this. This is not the first time, and we appreciate that. Today is the beginning of every day's future for our wounded warriors, and please continue, because we appreciate it. There's no words that I can tell you that express our gratitude, because you are saving lives, especially those that can't speak, and that's why I'm here. I'm a voice for them. I thank you. God bless the men and women who serve our country in the past, the present, and the future. And I have one more thing to add. You know that young man that was on that plane? I had seen him for 4 years. I almost forgot to tell you this. I saw him for the first time last week. His wife came up to me and said, "You helped my husband on a plane 4 years ago." I started crying. I said, "I've been looking for him." He is now with Wounded Warrior Project programs, and he is a Marine, and he looks fantastic. And he thanked me, and we cried and hugged, because Wounded Warrior Project has changed his life. God bless America. Thank you.